All right, guys. Well, no, thank you, sir. Thank you. All two people here. Guys, I know a few of you came in and mentioned that you have classes after this session, so I do want to start right at 12. So you have time for questions, and we make sure we get through all the material here for the resume writing workshop today. As mentioned, there's a whole two people in the room here today, but please keep in mind, guys, that we do have folks that are watching from at a distance. So we do have folks watching from their computers, whether at work or at home. We also have classrooms tuning in. So if I keep looking up at the camera and not at you, please understand that is why I'm doing that. So just to make sure that's clear. What we'd like to do, a couple ground rules before we begin. Everyone, if you could, please write down your questions as we're moving along. So if you have any questions about material we covered today, or you had some questions that you wanted to present during the session today, please make sure you write them down as we move along, and we're going to try to save those to the end of the session, especially for the folks at a distance, so that we can keep moving through that material and making sure that folks that do need to leave at 1 can leave at 1. All right? But what we're doing today, as you know, my name is Dan Grigg, and I am the career counselor / student success specialist here at Guilford Technical Community College. Little background about me, I've worked for a company called JobLink, which I'm sure some of you have heard of here in North Carolina. It was actually called One Stop down in South Carolina. And I actually began working as a career counselor about 2 months before the recession hit. So about a month to 2 months before the recession actually was declared a recession, I began working for an organization that helped people get back to work. So I've got a lot of experience with helping folks not only to prepare for interviews, but what we're going to talk about today, which is creating a resume that will help you get to that interview. More importantly, creating a resume that will help you stand out from all the other resumes when applying to a job. One thing I want everyone to remember today, if there's anything you remember today, is that we are here to help you. Please don't feel like you come to this session and after this session you're on your own to create a resume. We are always here through our Student Success Center to help folks write resumes. And at the end of this session, I'm going to give my contact information, and for the 3 folks that are in this room, I'll be giving you my business card as well so that we can schedule appointments to work on your resumes. All right. So with that said, we are going to talk about my favorite thing in the whole world, which is creating a resume. I truly do enjoy making resumes. I enjoy reviewing student resumes and helping them to edit them to make them stand out for employers. What we want to talk about today, before we talk about creating the resume, before you can apply to a job, we have to do the number one cliche thing I'm going to say of the day. And it's something that we forget about so often, but in reality, when we go to an interview, what's the first question an employer asks us? Tell me about you, right? Yep, tell me about you. It's that icebreaker where they say, tell me about you. And when you're up for a job and you know you're about to be making $32,000 a year with full benefits, tell me about you becomes a very serious loaded question, doesn't it? And a question you thought you could answer with no problem becomes a question that completely perplexes you and you don't end up answering because you haven't thought thoroughly enough about who you are. Trust me, guys, I love what I do because every mistake that can be made, I've made in the interview process. And one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made, whether it be with my resume or an interview, was tell me about you. I didn't know myself the way I should have, right? I understood personal things about myself and some professional things about myself. But when it came to what I've actually accomplished, but more importantly, what have I accomplished that's going to bring value to the companies I'm applying for? That's the type of thing where I've gone to interviews and they've said, tell me about you, and I stare at them for 30 seconds with my mouth open trying to figure out what I'm supposed to say. Guys, I know it's cliche, but you have to know who you are. You need to know a sales pitch about yourself because at any point, someone may meet you and say, hey, I've got a job available in that field. Tell me a little bit about yourself and why I should hire you, right? Guys, it happens all the time. We think this is something that career counselors make up, but in reality, we can be networking anywhere, whether it be grocery shopping, at our local church, or sitting next to someone in our classroom that we build a relationship with. How you doing, man? So guys, we want to make sure that before we do anything, before we apply to a job, before we write a resume, before we can interview, we have to take a step back and identify what are our strengths, our skills, and our successes. In addition to that, we have to create a goal. The recession is gone. Trust me, we've all been affected by that recession in multiple ways. It is so hard to move forward into the future without thinking about that recession. It almost feels like at times we're still in it. But I have to tell you guys, we have to let that go. We have to stop going to job fairs and telling people, I'll do anything. Right? Because as a recruiter, I'm not looking for someone that says, I'll do anything. I'm looking for someone that's goal-oriented, that has a specific idea in mind of how they can serve my company or work with my company. So it's not just your strengths, your skills, and your successes, but it's what's my goal, and then what are the strengths, skills, and successes that can help me meet that goal. And then I create a commercial for it, a 30-second commercial where I put myself in the shoes of a recruiter and I happen to be out and about, possibly at a job fair, or maybe I'm at my kid's softball game. And I find out that the person sitting next to me is hiring for something that I'm interested in working in. And we begin to talk, and that friendly conversation about our kids playing softball turns into an interview where this person looks at me and says, so why should I hire you? And what are we going to say, right? As you have to be ready to answer this question. You have to be ready to say, these are the 5 things that have prepared me for a job with you, and I'd love to come in for an official interview, tell you a little bit more about how my experience in education can support your company, right? So please, before you write the resume, before you meet with me to create a resume, before you start applying to jobs, you need to create a goal, and you need to understand what are the things you've done that can prepare you to get that goal achieved, right? What value can you bring to companies? So I told you, it sounds very cliche, but it's a fact of life, guys. We need to know how we can sell ourselves. And if we can't sell ourselves, we can't work. And if we can't work, we can't make the money we need to sustain ourselves or to meet our personal and professional goals, all right? So guys, an effective resume helps an applicant get a job, right? But it's your first impression with an employer. I don't know about you guys, but have you ever met someone where they're just not nice to you the first time you meet them? Or they come in disheveled and they just seem completely out of it and they almost don't want to be bothered with you? The next time you go to get service from that company, do you want to see that person again? I know everybody in this room has anybody in this room had a bad first impression with someone before? Does everybody run to see them again the next time you see them? So how do you think an employer feels when I get a resume and it's not structured in a way that's easy for me to read? It's not using bullet points, so I have to read through paragraphs, which can be overwhelming. And you say things like detailed-oriented, but you spell the word detailed-oriented wrong. How do you think I want to see you again? Do you think I want to bring you in for an interview? Guys, it is your first impression. More importantly, it is you expressing to the employer that you can communicate in writing. Right? It's the number 1 step. And if you can't communicate in writing, you're never going to be brought in for me to determine whether or not in the interview you can communicate in person. So you always make sure, especially for those jobs that you really want, you have to be sure that someone is always reviewing your resume after you've made your changes. And we're going to talk about making changes here in a moment. Right? Every time I apply to a job, my resume changes. If anybody's ever worked in sales, you do not use the same sales pitch with every person that comes through your store, right? All of us are different. And a good salesperson sizes up their audience, identifies very quickly what it is they need in their life, and then they figure out a way to tailor that product to their need, right? When I apply for a job, I'm doing the same thing. And my resume is my sales pitch. My resume is not, let me list a bunch of bullets of everything I've ever done. A resume is, let me give you some bullets describing what I've done that can bring value to your company. It's a sales pitch, right? And it has to be a good one if you want me as the employer to buy you. And in reality, they're investing in you. They're investing in you more than you could ever imagine. If you're a $10 an hour employee, right, and you work 40 hours a week, that's a $400 paycheck before taxes, and you think that's all you're getting from the employer. But if you're working full-time, there's benefits, right? There's insurance. There's life insurance. There could be a pension or a retirement plan. That $10 an hour employee becomes a lot more expensive for the employer than you realize, right? You need to show them that you're there for the company. And you can't prove to me that you're there for my company if you don't sell me on it, if you don't know what it is that I'm looking for. So we're going to talk about reading your job description and tailoring that resume every time you apply. Remember, a resume, guys, focuses on skills and abilities. It focuses on our skills. Folks will create resumes and they'll add charts. Nice, pretty charts. I love them every time. Every time someone sits at my desk to look at a resume, folks from the medical office or office administration programs that know so much more about Word than I do will sit down and I go, man, that's pretty. I like that. and it's a 3-column table, and it looks great, and then I start to read what's in the bullets on the 3-column table, and it says things like hardworking, dependable, loyal. And in reality, guys, everybody says that, right? Everybody says they're a team player. I don't know anyone that goes to an interview and says, listen, I'm not really great at working as a team, but if you yell at me enough, I think I can work with Barbara, right? No one says that, right? No one says, I can do one thing really good all day if you keep my door shut and no one interrupts me. Everybody says they multitask, right? Resume is about skills, and as students, you are paying to get skills. You should be more confident than anyone, right? Because you have skills that are fresh in your mind. Even folks with experience. And nothing trumps experience except were they taught the right way. Schooling is a guarantee that you were in many instances, right? If I were an IT major and I'm getting a computer science degree from Guilford Tech and I take a Microsoft test and Microsoft certifies me to use Word and Excel, that's a big statement, right? That's a big skill that I need to tell an employer, right? So we're going to talk more about how to focus your document on skills alone, right? It raises your self-confidence when searching for a job. It really does. I had the ugliest resume a person can possibly have when I began looking for my first job after graduate school. And I would literally show it to people, and the recognition on their face would just tell me how bad looking my resume really was. Talk about a confidence destroyer, right? Looking for a job is incredibly stressful, as I know everyone in this room and anyone watching from your computer knows. It's incredibly stressful. The last thing I need is to be self-conscious about whether or not this document looks good. That's why we're here. We can help you with that, but we need you to be confident. The number one thing when you're looking for a job is confidence. And if you don't have that confidence, we're going to move on to someone that does show me that they're confident and they're comfortable to do the job. It aids an employer in matching your skills, and it targets a specific audience. So listen, some of these workshops can get pretty boring. So I've got a scenario that I've got here on the PowerPoint. I'm going to read it to you guys, and I'd like you to tell me whether or not you'd buy a car from this gentleman. All right? So it's time to buy a new car. I'm driving down I-40. I got my 5 kids in the back seat. I'm a single dad, and my 1986 station wagon explodes. Right? So we get off of I-40. The next day I drive down to my local car salesman and I say, listen, I got to buy a new car. So I'm walking around with the car salesman with my 5 kids, may I add, and I say, listen, I need something with safety, size. Obviously I got my 5 kids, and cheap, right? I need something. I'm on a budget. So the car salesman proceeds to show me a 2-seated convertible. He shows me one of those smart cars. You ever see one of those smart cars? Little golf cart cars. Hey, they're great for the environment. Very scary to drive on the interstate. So he shows me one of those. Shows me a Camaro made of fiberglass. I could throw a rock at that thing and it starts breaking into pieces. Then he shows me the satellite radio features of the Camaro. He shows me the convertible top, and he shows me the convenience and the cost savings of the smart car. So let me ask you, if you were me and your car blew up yesterday, you have your 5 kids with you, and you say, I want safety, size, and budget, and he shows you that, would you buy the car?
No.
Why?
It doesn't meet the requirement that I'm looking for.
Yeah, it doesn't meet the requirement that I'm looking for is what was said, right? I told him safety, size, and budget. What did he show me? Everything that wasn't that, right?
Yeah.
Everything that wasn't that. So let me put it into perspective. Pretend this car salesperson sold more cars than anybody at his dealership last month. And no matter what people said when they came in, he seemed to only sell Camaros, smart cars, and the convertible cars. So when I was speaking, he wasn't listening. Because he has the same sales pitch, and in his mind, the same sales pitch works with everybody, and it's going to work on me. And guess what it did? It didn't work, right? Does this sound familiar when you apply to a job and you don't change your resume? You assume that a police officer is a police officer is a police officer. And a police officer for the city of Winston-Salem is very different than a police officer for Atlantic City. Very different. They're extremely different communities. You may have different roles on what you do. They're governed in a different way. And if you read your job description, you're going to realize that between those 2 jobs, there are very different responsibilities for one compared to the other. But you created a resume and assume, well, I'm me, and I'm going to put everything I've ever done on there and send it out. Well, as the employer, as the person buying, I'm upset because I created a job description to tell you what I want. I told you my safety, size, and budget, and you didn't touch upon those points. Am I going to interview you? You see where I'm going with that? I know it's tedious. Trust me, guys. I worked for JobLink in South Carolina during the recession, and I would have a person, 6'7", come in, rode in on a Harley, very intimidating, sit across from my desk and literally start weeping because they applied to 200 jobs the week before and not a single employer called them. And no one wants them, and they give 1,000 different excuses on why they weren't good enough to be called. And I look at them every time, and I still do this today, even though the economy's better, and I say, wow, that's a lot of resumes to tailor to each job description. And what do they say every time? I didn't change my resume. I'm me. I send the same resume to everybody. I apply to 200 people. Eventually, someone's going to call me. And guess what they didn't do? They didn't call them, right? Because you didn't give them the safety, size, and budget they were looking for. Listen, don't apply to 200 jobs a week. Apply to 3 and spend an hour reading your job description and telling them what is the safety, size, and budget you have that works for that company. I get really passionate about it because when I met my wife, it took me 9 months. 9 months to get from Myrtle Beach to Charleston, South Carolina. And I wasn't getting any calls. I was doing the same thing, applying to everything I thought would work, possibly work, right? Applying to some things I knew wouldn't work. And guess what no one was doing? They weren't calling me. And when I got some advice to start tailoring my resume to the job description, I started getting interviews. Then I had a new challenge. I couldn't interview. And we'll talk about that on October 21st if you'd like to come to that session. Plus, trust me, that one is much more fun, and we'll talk about ways to succeed in the interview. But it really helped, right? And I wish I had thought of that 3 months into my job search so I could have been with the person I love the most, right? So please, please, always read your job description. Always read your job description and tell them what you want. What does that say right there? Yes. Anybody get frustrated? Anybody been to a resume workshop before where they say, has to be this way? And then you get into like your English class and they say, has to be that way. And then you start kind of pulling out your hair and you're like, are they just winging it? Does anybody actually know what they're talking about that should be on a resume? Well, I'm here to make your English teachers, ACA teachers, and counselors over at JobLink angry because there is no one right way. Listen, there's etiquette, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But there is no one right way to do a resume. I'm assuming everyone in the room is very different than each other, right? We've all been different places. We've all experienced different things. Some of us have a lot of experience. Some of us have no experience. Why would someone with a lot of experience have a 1-page resume? Why would someone that has no experience in a field have a 3-page resume? Everybody's different, depending on what you've accomplished and where you are in your job search, right? So if someone looks at your resume and goes, that's wrong, they're probably inaccurate or they're lying because there is no one right way. Human resource professionals all over the country do not have a giant book and your resume comes in and they open the book and go, it says right here, no one should ever use an objective. I'm not looking at this resume, right? Guys, there is no one right way. What you do need to do is get my attention very quickly, right? And the best way to get my attention is to show me you have the skills to bring value to my company. So that's the one right way to do a resume. All right, guys, so here's some resume do's. Limited in experience in a field. So I'm a student. I'm going to Guilford Tech for computer information technology, right? And I've never worked in the IT field or sector before. When I graduate in May, I should try to keep my document to a 1-page resume. Why? Because I haven't done a lot in the field, right? So I don't need to put McDonald's and then give them 9 bullets taking up this much of my resume describing every little thing I did at McDonald's. Why? Because although there's some valuable things you did at McDonald's that may work in the IT field, I don't need to know that you cut lemons as side work, right? I don't need to know that you clean the store after each shift because you're not cleaning stores as an IT professional, right? So guys, 1 page, we should keep it limited, right? We should keep it limited and focus on the skills, and we're going to talk about how to sell your education as well. If it's a lot of experience in the field, you should have at least a 2-page resume at that point, right? Look, if we can keep it to a page, it's good. But folks make the mistake of going to a session and hearing a resume has to be a page. And then they use tiny font. They use like 6 font that no one can read, and their margins are this thin, and there's no white space, and the document's clumped together, and it's an unusable document, right? Because no one can read it. At some point, everyone in this room, and that'll be a glorious day. It's a happy day when your resume goes to 2 pages because you know you finally have experience in the field and you don't have to stress as much as you did when you first graduated school. Anybody ever say, how do I get experience if I have to have experience for all the jobs I apply to? Every job says I have to have experience, but how do you get experience if you need experience for all the jobs? It frustrates everyone. I said the same thing. I said the same thing to my academic advisors and career counselors at the College of Charleston. I have students say it every day, right? So we're going to talk about ways to expand using your education and talking about how you do have experience, right? So once you do have experience, we may need to go to 2 pages, right? If I'm applying to a staffing agency, which many of us do, especially at a place like Guilford Tech where we have lots of trades programs, most of these manufacturing, advanced manufacturing fields will not just hire you right out. You have to go through a staffing agency before they'll invest in you. When I go to a staffing agency for the first time, I want to bring them as much information about me as possible, right? The staffing agency, because they can only place me if they know everything there is to know about me from a work experience standpoint, right? But when they assign me to go to an interview at Polo Ralph Lauren and High Point, I'm going to bring them the 1-page, slim, get-to-the-point resume, right? Because the staffing agency needs to know everything about me to say, okay, we're going to get you an interview here and an interview there. But when I actually go to the interviews, I'm going to use a resume that's easy to follow with that employer. So you see how everybody's a little bit different? Everybody's a little bit different. I'm going to give you lots of examples on how that is today. Guys, only go back about 10 years. So look, if you don't have 10 years of work experience, please don't stress out right now. Go back as far as you can. If you can go back 10 years, go back 10 years. For those of us that have worked over 10 years ago and it's not related to the job, we don't need to put a lot of information, if any, about that, right? Because you're telling them too much. And most applications, when you look at them, will ask you to go back 10 years, right? So let's keep the resume to 10 years. Now here's the one size does not fit all. Say I was a medical assistant 12 years ago. I'm going to go back 12 years because I'm applying to be a medical assistant or I'm applying to be a nurse, and that medical experience can help me. So the 10-year rule, unless something is relevant that can help you get the job, we're only going to go back 10 years. Please use a clean, readable format, guys. Anything below a 10-point font, and 10 is pushing it. Anything below a 10 is hard for me to read. When we look at a resume, and I was telling some students about it yesterday, and by the way, everyone in the room has an example of a sample resume that you can take a look at here for you. A resume is what we call scannability. It is a made-up word, I know, but a resume is all about scannability. I need to be able, as a recruiter or hiring manager, to be able to scan your document very quickly and find the information I'm looking for, which is why we use bullet points. Guys, every year we do what's called an employer panel. And we put local employers on this stage, and they tell you what they want from resumes. They tell you what they want from interviewing. We've had some big companies here. UPS, Fastenal, Cone Health, High Point Regional. All the major hospitals have participated, those 2 anyway, have participated in this process. We had BB&T 2 years ago. And every single employer that's ever been on the stage, one of their biggest critiques of a resume is a lack of bullet points. It's a structure used where they can't find the information they want. We had Timco on stage, and Timco immediately goes to work experience, maybe education. BB&T immediately goes to work experience, and then maybe summary of skills. And if these sections, I can't find them, what do I do? Exactly. And I'm moving on to someone that can show me a document that can help me find the information I'm looking for quickly. You'll notice, especially if you come on October 21st to the interview prep workshop, that I talk a lot from the employer's perspective, because you have to understand why they do what they do in order for you to find a job, right? And we got to put ourselves in their shoes. Listen, I post a job and I have 300 of these resumes to go through. As the job seeker, you're hoping they're going to call you, but for me, that's work, right? That's a lot of resumes for me to review and pick 5 people to interview from. I've got to be able to find information quickly. And if font is too small, if it's used in an unprofessional way where I can't read it, it's not that something's right and wrong, it's whether or not I can scan with it. So students will say, what about this font? Well, the answer is, A, does it look professional, but B, can I read it? And can I read it quickly, right? So making sure that the font we use is appropriate. Make sure you check your spelling, grammar, and punctuation. I am embarrassed. I've been doing this for 7 years. And I had 2 different workshops in a row where I spelled HIPAA wrong on your sample resume. 2 different times. And I do this for a living. Guys, if I make mistakes like that, Imagine the types of mistakes you're going to make when you're nervous and you really want the job and you're editing your resume. Things like misspellings and typos are a major problem. Remember, it's your first impression. And my first impression of you is that multiple words are spelled incorrectly. What does that say about the type of employee you may be, right? So always have another set of eyes. The good example is the English class example. We all remember it. Over there, the possession, right? And then they are the contraction. By the way, we never use contractions on a professional document, right? That English 111 class that we all said, why do I have to take it? Now I'm telling you why you had to take that class. You should all email your professor and thank him or her for what they've done for you. You don't use contractions. When we spell numbers below 10, right? These are little things that we learned in English and go, what does this have to do with anything? Right here, right? It's your resume showing them that you can communicate properly in writing. So make sure you don't use contractions. Don't list personal information other than your name, address, phone number. It's a real story, guys. My first year here back in 2010, we had a student. She was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. She was top of her class, graduated from her major. She was on our SGA. She was involved in everything charitable she could be for you guys and the local community. I mean, she was phenomenal. And rarely do I be a personal reference for a student I haven't worked in because I don't want that bridge to be burned for you guys in the future. So I served as a personal reference for her, set her up an interview with a local company for a human resource management assistant. And the company calls me right before the interview and says, hey, you know what, we've decided we don't want to interview her now. Do you want to call her or should we? And I said, listen, you're making a huge mistake. She's a phenomenal student. Please, you need to reconsider, what did she do? So he happened to go out onto her Facebook page. And I know we're all about to cringe, but she had it private. Everything was private for her Facebook page. The only thing you could see when you look her up until she befriends you is a picture of her. And it happened to be a picture of her sitting on a Harley Davidson, clad in leather, with a guy hanging off her back. This is a true story, dead true story. The employer said, so this is what I saw in the picture. And I said, sir, I'm confused. What's the problem with that picture? And he says, well, everyone that rides a Harley Davidson, I know the types of people that ride Harley Davidsons. They're like those types of people in gangs. Like this guy literally thought that everyone that rides a Harley Davidson is someone that's one of these guys from Sons of Anarchy, that show on FX, and is going to come in and beat up your clients and sell people drugs. It's a true story. And I said, sir, that's not true, but hey, I'll call her and appease you and find out what's going on with the picture. Can you give me some time? So I call her and say, listen, I know you're not in a gang. What's going on? And she points out, anybody heard of a poker run? It is a charitable thing that different bike clubs do where they ride from establishment to establishment raising money for different charitable causes. Her Harley Club was a picture of her, and by the way, the guy on her back he was talking about hanging off her was her husband, and that was a picture they were taking before a ride to raise money for kids with disabilities here in Greensboro. And the name of their club, by the way, had to do with raising money for kids with disabilities. Guys, when we tell someone that I love drumming, that's fine. You think it's innocent, but everyone immediately thinks about what is a drummer in their mind. We give them personal information that they definitely don't care about. I don't need to know that you're a basket weaver to come work here for Apple. I don't need to know it because you're not basket weaving in Apple. Why are you telling me that? But guys, every once in a while, someone will discriminate based on simply what we do. Right? There's so many ways to discriminate. It's beyond the color of our skin, who we do and don't worship, and our gender, guys. It comes back, it could be regional, it could be geographic, it could be what I like to do. Right? It's called stereotyping, and we need to leave that information off. It is not relevant to the job, and it can open us up to problems, right? It can open us up to being interpreted in a way that's not fair to us, right? So always leave that off. Never list everything you've done, right? I helped a student recently with a resume, and they haven't gotten close to graduation, and they've never worked in the field, and they sit down, I open up the resume, and it's 3 pages in a small font. And I'm like, wow, how's this possible? And they go, you haven't really worked much. And I'm like, it's 3 pages. So we make the font big enough to work it with, so now it's 4 pages. And I look at the resume, and they had literally copied and pasted their job descriptions from places like Hardee's and TJ Maxx and dropped it into the resume. So each job they did was 16 bullets. And the thing is, you're applying for an entry-level accounting job, and you're telling me that you cut lemons at Hardee's before your shift. I don't know about you guys, but most of the folks I've worked with that worked in accounting in the past are not required to cut up lemons before their shift managing the books, right? So we need to make sure that we're not telling them everything, but that we're telling them what they need to know. So everybody does this. They think, well, I worked at Hardee's for 6 years. What does that have to do with accounting? Right? And there's things that it may have to do with. I work with CNAs all the time, and they say this. I worked TJ Maxx for the last 8 years. I want to be a certified nursing assistant in medical. There's nothing in common between the two. Of course there is. It's customer service all day long. Anybody work customer service before? I see your face. It's a happy, magical thing, isn't it? It can overwhelm you. But guys, that's real world experience. And if I'm applying to be a CNA, yeah, I get it. It was Hardee's. But so what? Anybody work in fast food where you've been yelled at because you forgot someone's French fries or you didn't move fast enough because they're on a timetable? Yeah. Guess what happens when you're a certified nursing assistant? And I'm put in a senior home or some sort of assisted living facility where I don't want to be there. People are probably going to be kind of mean to you. You couldn't yell at them at Hardee's. You can't yell at them at that, right? So tell me you got great customer service. Tell me about accomplishments, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Don't tell me you cut lemons, right? The first bullet could always be, this is what I did, right? And if you were a cashier, then you can say, utilize the POS system to accept customer cash and credit payments. But after that, now we're using bullet points based on what I read on the job description. So if I read the job description and go, you know what, I did do that at Hardee's, I need to tell them that, right? I can only interview you if you tell me your safety, size, and budget in relation to my job, right? So, guys, please, I'm going to lecture you a lot today about reading that job description. Please, please, apply. It's about quality, not quantity. You don't have to use the pronouns. So if you look at your sample resumes, you don't have to say, I answered phones. You don't have to say, I packed boxes. You can just start with the verb, packed boxes, right? Answered phones. A lot of us do this. We get nervous and we write statements about ourselves, and that's not what the resume is about, right? So start with the verb. Always make sure it's some sort of action verb, and I can help you with the wording. If you're not the world's best wording person, that's what we're here for, right? Hey, that's what I do. I wish I was a math guy, but I'm a wording guy, so I'm here for you. If you need help with your algebra, I'm not your man. So guys, never exaggerate or misrepresent experience. So here's an example. I go back to the advising center, and my boss, Keisha, says, hey, Dan, how was your resume session? And I say, Keisha, it was great. We had like 12 people. What did I just do to my boss? Yeah. See, you're good. Half of the room usually says exaggerate, and it's usually the guys, and half the room says lie, right? We're the kings of exaggeration. I lied. I counted the people in the room. There's only 4 people here. I threw in the like. It was like 12. But in reality, I knew there were 4 people. I lied to my boss. So on a resume, if I say I'm proficient in the use of Microsoft Excel, and I'm the employer and you're in the interview and I go, great, we're looking for someone that is very proficient in the use of Microsoft Excel. We use a lot of pivot tables for reporting purposes here for this company. Tell me a little bit about your knowledge of pivot tables. Do you have experience doing those? And if you stare at me like she is saying, what's a pivot table? Then you just did what? You lied. Yeah, you didn't mean to lie, but you did. Because proficiency means you know everything there is to know about the topic. Listen, when you go to an interview, you're going to be asked questions that are going to try to find out whether or not what you told them is true. It's part of the interview process, and we're going to talk about that on October 21st. I'm plugging that interview prep workshop hard because interviewing is so incredibly challenging. And what makes it really challenging is just like when we're pulled over by a police officer, and they ask you the same question 3 different ways, and you're like, I just told you I'm going to my grandma's house. Guys, in an interview, they're going to ask you questions in different ways. There are some occupations at this college, for example, dental hygiene, where you're going to do a working interview. And if you say on your resume that you're proficient, and I bring you in to clean someone's teeth, and you don't know how to use different instruments, and you're confused about different medical terminology that I'm using with you, what did you just do to me? I lied. Yeah. So guys, be careful about how you word yourself. I know the temptation is there. I had a coworker go over to Greensboro campus for a position. She ended up getting the job. First interview was great. All the stuff we worked on, they did. Second interview, she came back and I said, hey, how was the second interview? She goes, that was pretty tough. I wasn't expecting it. I go, what happened? And she goes, they brought me into one room and I took a Microsoft test on Excel and Word and had to prove I could do it the way I said I could. And then they made me take a typing test to prove I could type the number of words per minute with accuracy that I said I could on my resume and in line with the job description. Man, 10 years ago, I could have told GTCC I graduated from MIT with a master's degree in programming, and they probably would have hired me and not figured it out for 6 months. Now I come in and I say the word proficient, and they're asking me to do it, right? Our graphic design students have it the hardest. You go to an interview and there's no, tell me about you and how do you feel about working this job? It's great. Here's a common poster that we make for our clients. You mentioned you're proficient in the use of the InDesign software. Great. We have that loaded on this computer right here, right now. You now have 30 minutes to recreate this document. And by the way, we're going to watch you and see how you use the system because you said you're proficient, right? So please, guys, be very careful about how you sell yourself. I know you didn't mean to lie, but in the end of the day, the employer sees it as a lie, right? So everybody, this is the nuts and bolts of a resume. This is kind of what we call a combination resume. There's different kinds of resumes, and I don't want to bore you with all the different kinds. Combination resume takes an opportunity to list the different skills you have, but it also lists where you've worked and when. All right, so your sample resumes are an example of a combination resume. So what we're going to do is go through contact information, the objective, education, summary of skills, and work experience. Contact information. Guys, leave it professional, right? Make sure that that email address you have is professional. I understand you've had that email address since high school. You make people laugh with it. Everybody loves it. But when you apply to a job and I go to email you to say I'd like to give you an interview and I see fuzzyslippers@hotmail.com, kind of questioning whether or not I really should send it to you. What's going on with the fuzzy slippers, right? So guys, make sure your email address is professional. Here's the thing. You might want to create a secondary email address. One that's professional, where if you apply to a job, for example, like a Craigslist, which Craigslist can be hostile, right? We don't know if everything is legitimate. So when I do a Craigslist, I don't want to give them my address, I don't want to give them my phone number, and I don't want to give them an email address where they can create a spam bomb on me, right? So using a secondary email address can kind of protect your original account, keeps it professional, and you know if emails are coming in there, the majority of them are about a job, right? So I would definitely recommend creating a secondary email address for your job search. Something new that I needed to update and I didn't put on the slide, we're going to do a workshop in November about how to use LinkedIn and other social media to find a job. Listen, if you have a LinkedIn account, you can also add a link to your LinkedIn account, which can tell an employer a whole lot more about you and help you merge your way into an interview. So, guys, that contact information, we're going to leave it to address, phone numbers, email address, preferably a secondary email address, and a LinkedIn account if you would like to do something similar to that. The objective. So everybody has a different opinion on whether or not an objective should be used. And I tell you, listen, it's totally optional. It's up to you. What I can tell you is if you do use an objective like the one we have on the example there. An objective has to be impactful, right? So if you say your objective is use my skills and abilities to enhance the performance of your organization, I'm over it. Right? I see that on how many resumes all the time. You Googled what's a good objective and you throw that on there. You just wasted this much space on your resume that you could have been selling me on skills, right? So if you use an objective, it has to be something impactful like using my medical office training and 3 years of administrative experience, obtain the part-time medical office position currently available through Cone Health. Guys, the first thing I see if you're using an objective is a sales pitch. Then I see the name of my company and I see the position you're applying to. I at least know you changed your resume that much for me if you're using the objective. But again, the objective is something that folks don't always look at, right? And if they're not going to look at it or you're having trouble keeping it to a page, the objective can go. What I don't ever want you to do is add a professional summary and then give them a big paragraph of information about yourself. Guys, I don't know about you, but when I see paragraphs, I'm overwhelmed. Especially when I've got 300 of those to go through and I've got to start reading paragraphs. Does anybody hate going to a website and you need a quick answer and it's just like just giant paragraphs and like, oh my gosh, I just need to know when registration is. And I'm reading about the biography of Dr. Randy Parker and how he became the president of Guilford Technical Community College. Guys, words intimidate us. They overwhelm us. And once again, from the employer's perspective, it's scannability. I can't scan to see if you're in the potential pile to interview if you're using big paragraphs and you're not using bullet points. So please don't put the giant professional summary identifying everything there is about you, right? Education. Only list colleges you've completed. So I help folks all the time, and they've been to lots of different colleges and they've transferred. I helped someone recently and they'd been to 4 different colleges. And when I sat down with them, they had them all listed, and I said, oh, wow, great. So what degree did you get from that school? Oh, I didn't get one. What degree did you get from RCC? Oh, I didn't get one. Do you have a degree from here, from Guilford Tech? I don't have one. You see where I'm going with that, guys? It looks like you're starting a lot of things that you're not finishing. And that says a lot about you, right? Resumes or actions speak louder than words. And if I see that you've been to a lot of different schools and you haven't completed something, that sends me a message that if I hire you, you may be given tasks that you don't complete properly, right? So don't list everything you've ever done, right? And here's the exception to the rule. The one size does not fit all. Say I was unemployed from 2009 to 2011, and I went to App State for their basket weaving program. I didn't finish it. Should I put it? Yes, because it fills in a gap in work history, right? It shows that I was attempting school while I was unemployed, right? So see how one size does not fit everybody? So guys, if there's a gap in work history and you were in school, let's put it. If there's no gap in work history and you didn't complete it, leave it off. I get it. You're proud, right? Trust me. If you go to a university and you make it 2 years, that's a big accomplishment. Even though you didn't receive a credential, you worked very hard to get through that 2 years, and we understand that. But we don't want to send that type of message to an employer. Plus, it's just information that doesn't help me. So if you took all sociology classes and English classes and you're applying for a welding position, it's going to be a pretty hard sell to point out to them that that experience brings value to hiring you. Maybe in some ways, right? But it's not directly related, so we're going to leave it off. List your degrees and certificates from newest to oldest, right? Just like your work experience section. If Guilford Tech's your latest and greatest, it's at the top of the document, and then you list your other work experiences. Your education. Just like we see there on the example. You did not go to GTCC, right? You did not go to GTCC. You went to Guilford Technical Community College, right? We are not MIT. The entire planet does not understand what our acronym means, right? So leave it on there. Listen, people make this mistake all the time. They'll say their degree is in office administration. We don't have a degree in office administration. We have an associate's degree with a concentration in office administration. But we have certificates, diplomas, and associate's degrees, all in office administration. And the certificate is very different than the degree. The degree is going to probably get you an interview. The certificate's going to be a hard sell to get that interview. So guys, designate what form of credential you got. So any of you going to get a bachelor's degree, you need to list Bachelor of Arts in Political Science, Associate of Applied Science in Office Administration, right? So guys, make sure if you haven't graduated, you emphasize that you haven't graduated. And last but not least, guys, if you have things that make you stand out at the school, you need to put it, right? I just met a student on my way over to this workshop, and he told me that he just started his own club here at the college. And a part of that club is helping people in that club get internship and volunteer opportunities so that they can find their first job, right? He's filling that skill gap. That's something you got to have on your resume, right? That's a huge deal. Put it on there. Listen, if you have a high GPA, it should be on your resume. Now, I get it. Some fields, having a high GPA does not necessarily mean you're going to be good at the job. For example, sales. Does not necessarily mean you're going to be a good salesperson because you study well. But listen, if you have a 3.8 GPA and you're looking to be a nurse or in an office environment like this student was on this resume here, the sample one we have for you, that means that if they work that hard at school, they're probably going to work that hard on the job, right? So, guys, put your GPA. Remember, actions speak louder than words. If I can see that you went to school from 2011 to 2015, you had a 3.8 GPA, you were a member of GTCC's IT club, and you worked 2 part-time jobs, that tells me you're a multitasker. That tells me you can handle pressure. And by the way, you handle pressure well because you have a 3.8 GPA. You see where I'm going with that? So guys, think of ways when you're looking at your education to say, I'm great. If you're on a sports team at the college, put it on there. Our athletes go through more than anyone could possibly imagine. And they have to, because if they don't, they can't stay on the team. They have very high expectations they have to comply with, right? That sends a message to me as an employer. If you played on the women's basketball team, who by the way was number 8 in the country last year, and I know that information, that tells me simply being a part of the team that you can follow directions and you can work well as a team, right? They had to work well as a team because they were number 8 in the country and they went to nationals in Kansas. So Guys, think about being creative, putting things on there to show more than I just got the degree. Don't be afraid to sell your degree. My IT example is a great example, information technology. If I get computer information technology degree from Guilford Tech and I learn how to use 5 softwares, you should put that you've taken basic and advanced Java, completed basic and advanced C#, right? Tell me these things. You know, we helped a student recently that graduated from programming, and she came in and said, I think people are stealing my information from the posts that you're posting. I'm applying to these jobs. I have the degree and no one's calling me. And I said, you know, I don't think they're doing that. We verify that they're all legitimate before we post these things. And I said, tell me an example of one you're not getting an interview. And she showed me the job description and sent me her resume. And it really wanted someone, I mean, it said it 3 different times on the job description. Java programming. Guess what was not on her resume? Java programming. Why didn't you tell me you took 2 classes on it? Why didn't you tell me that you're skilled in it? She may have been certified in it. Why didn't she put she was certified in it? Why? Because she used the same resume with everybody, and she didn't tailor it to tell the employer what they wanted. It's a perfect example of you're qualified and you're not getting the call. Guys, there was a study done recently out of San Francisco State University, and they looked at all the people that applied to a series of jobs. And they looked at the people that didn't go to the hiring manager, the people that didn't get referred for an interview. And when they looked at the 70%, everybody that didn't get approved, 70% of everybody that didn't go to the hiring manager had the skills to do the job, and they didn't tell the employer properly they did. They could have had an interview, but they didn't read the job description. And that brings me to this page. Make sure you are using a summary of skills section. If you are applying for a job, the number one thing you should do is print that job description. I know it's old-fashioned, but it works. Print your job description, and the first thing you do is go to minimum qualifications. What do you not do if you don't meet the minimum qualifications? You don't apply. You don't meet the minimum qualifications. Listen, folks, we have minimum qualifications for a reason. They not only are the minimum requirements you need to do the job properly, but it protects the integrity of the organization, right? We've all heard about nepotism, right? Everybody worked for a company before where someone was promoted to a position that they didn't have the skills to do, but we know they were promoted because they knew the owner or they had a relationship with an assistant manager. Guys, these are put in place to protect the integrity of the organization so that they can protect themselves from lawsuits, but to ensure that they're getting the best applicants for that job. And people will always do it. I'm one of them. Where I say they can look past that, I'm going to apply. They can't. They can't. I helped a veteran that just got back from Afghanistan, really, really amazing guy, and he sat down at my desk and he slid the job description across to me for Deer Hitachi up in Kernersville. Really wanted to work for the company, has like all this experience as a logistics manager in the Army, actually did logistics during wartime over in Afghanistan. And like literally in 1 minute, I broke that man's dreams because the first thing I saw when I looked at his job description while he was talking was in bold, capped, must have bachelor's degree. And what does he not have?
Bachelor's degree.
This guy had been working all week to apply for this job, couldn't wait to meet with me. He wanted to meet with me to make sure the job description perfectly matched the resume. And in literally 5 minutes, I dashed this man's hope and broke him and he didn't get the interview. Why? Because he didn't meet the minimum. And he thought they could look past that because of what he's done. Guys, he's done an amazing thing for our country, but I'm sorry. You don't meet the minimum. That bachelor's degree was a requirement. And guys, they use software now where a human being can't look at it and go, I think he's a great guy, I'm going to give him the chance. Now we use software. And I go to post a job and I call the programming person and I say, hey, programming person, these are the 10 things that have to be on this application or I never even want to see it. And then what happens when I apply and I don't put those 10 things? I become one of those 70% of those people I just talked about from San Francisco State that didn't get to interview, right? Because I didn't properly tell them I had what they were looking for. So guys, if you don't meet the minimum qualifications, your responsibility, if you really are passionate about it, is to meet them. Find a way to fill those skill gaps. If you need a certification, you need to go get it. If you need additional education, then that answered it. You probably need more education to go to where you want to be. But guys, if you meet the minimum, go to the preferred qualifications. Go to the minimum qualifications and make notes. So if it says 2 years experience in customer service and I've got 5, I'm going to highlight it, make a note and say 5 years customer service. If they're looking for someone that's proficient in the use of Excel, great. I'm going to make a note and say, I'm actually Microsoft certified in the use of Excel. I got to remember to put that on my resume and put the year I've gotten it, right? And put the type of Microsoft Excel I'm able to use and I'm certified in, whether it be 2010, 13, or whatnot. And then I come back to this section, the summary of skills section, and I feed them what they want to hear, right? So as a recruiter, if I look at that summary of skills section, which should be at the top of the document, I'm seeing things about you that's going to bring value to me. So, hey, I look at it and go, ooh, she has 5 years of customer service experience. Great. I just needed someone with 1. I'm interested. Every time I get to a bullet, you want to buy 30 more seconds of my time, right? So that scannability turns into me actually reading the resume. That's your goal, right? And you can't do that if you don't read your job description. So please, please read your job descriptions. Don't list a bunch of warm fuzzies in there. Remember our table we were talking about? Hardworking, dependable, loyal. Listen, those things are important, but pick 1 or 2 that you know are very important for the job and make that your warm fuzzy, right? So if it's medical assistant and you're going to be running the office for a medical practice, then being organized would probably be a good warm fuzzy, right? If you're working in a manufacturing environment, then working efficiently would be a good one, right? Because everything's about getting the product and meeting your daily goals for production, right? So if it's med tech or pharmacist, hopefully it's attention to detail, right? Because you're giving out medicines. You can do 1 decimal point wrong and someone's dying, right? So attention to detail is a good one for that. So making sure, guys, that we give them a warm fuzzy related to the job, but we keep it skills based at that point, right? And I can help you with that. And then last but not least, the most important section of any resume, regardless of what anybody ever says, is work experience. Every recruiter that's ever been on this stage I've ever talked to, the first thing they do when they look at your resume is they go right to work experience. And recruiters need to know where you've been and when. And I get this advice a lot. I hear some people say only put what's relevant to the job, and others say put everything. Well, I'm telling you, put everything the last 10 years. Because one of the biggest things I need to know about you is, are you consistent? And have you been working right in a pattern? Can I see where you've been? And I need to know where you've been. So I get it. You're applying for an office job, but it's okay to put Hardee's. Now remember, we talked about it earlier. Don't give me 14 bullets about Hardee's. Maybe give me 3 impactful bullets, right? We think the things we did while we were in college are irrelevant, and that's not true. Anybody work retail? Anybody work like a Black Friday before for like a Walmart or a Target or one of those types of companies, or a restaurant where things are crazy busy and you're on like 2-3 hour waits? Guys, I ask students this all the time. I do it with our CNA classes. And I got to tell you, if you've ever worked retail on Black Friday, that is a real job. I tell you how many students I meet where they go, I'm ready to start my first real job. No, I'm pretty sure that was a real job. My job is to help you see the value in what you did at Walmart and bring that to an interview. When we go on this session, October 21st, an interview is about convincing me that what you've done will bring value to me. You have to be proud of everything you've ever done when it comes to a work history. You cannot go into an interview and go, it was just Applebee's for 5 years. Which, by the way, that's a huge accomplishment. I helped a guy recently, huge success story. Huge success story. Recently, he worked for JCPenney part-time for the last 12 years. Just got his aviation management degree, was feeling down on himself, thinking no one was going to want him. We're looking at it. He's amazing. He got so many different awards working for that company. And by the way, JCPenney's probably has about a month to 3 month turnover rate. He was there 12 years. Talk about loyalty. Talk about commitment to a company. That's amazing. When he went to his interview, he got the job. He just sent me an email 2 weeks ago, starting out making $32,000 a year. And when he got to his interview, he didn't go, it was just JCPenney's. He said, sir, I know it's a little bit different than what I'll be managing here for this specific airport, but I noticed on your job description that you're looking for someone that is skilled in the following. Well, if you take a look at my resume, you'll see that these are 5 things I did with JCPenney's that I know I can bring to your clients here at this airport, right? Be proud of what you've done. Anybody a key holder at one point where you get tricked into, they trust you to give you the key and you end up opening and closing the store even though you're not a manager, you're just the cashier? Guys, that's great. You ever do a good job at the movie theater and someone say, you make the best popcorn, you're training all the new popcorn makers. And you get kind of huffy and you're like, really? Now I got to train people? But that's the best thing that ever happened to you because the company trusted you to train all their new employees in a specific area. I can't tell you how many restaurants I worked at thought it was irrelevant, where every new host got trained by me and a few of my friends. And I thought that was irrelevant, but the host is the very first person that greets every person that comes to that restaurant. They determine partly whether or not you're going to come back. And I was trusted to do that. You know, you guys need to sell this kind of stuff. Anybody receive an award, customer service award, you got to put it on there. Anybody receive an Employee of the Month award, put it on there. Don't be afraid to use detail and talk about accomplishments you had on the job. Don't just list, these are the 10 things I did. List, this is the one thing I did, and then give me bullets about accomplishments. Give me bullets about what will work for me. It's called a transferable skill. So guys, in a nutshell, that is making your resume. Resume 101. If you have any questions after the session, for anyone, we're going to do questions now. I know some of you need to get to class in about 5 minutes, but we're going to take questions. For the folks in the room, if you have questions, we're going to repeat them so anyone watching at a distance can hear them since you don't have a microphone. But please, my email address, careerservices@gtcc.edu. If you do not have a resume, we are not like other schools. We are very hands-on. We will build one with you from scratch. I'm going to ask you to put some things on a Word document, and I'll take care of making it look pretty. It takes me 5 minutes to format a document. That's the easy part. If you're worried about how your current resume is worded or how it's structured, make an appointment, guys. The only way we can help you is if you make the appointment to come in and get the help. Quick announcement, we'll do questions. We have a medical job fair coming up on November 4th. Anyone out there watching that is a medical student or trying to get into a medical program, anyone here today, guys, we've got a job fair. We've already got 25 companies on board. All of the major hospitals are coming. Cone Health System, High Point Regional, UNC Health System, Wake Forest Baptist, Novant. We've got some of the biggest companies here in the Triad that will be here to recruit with you. Please, 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 if you are looking for a job in medical, we need to meet to make sure your resume is stellar for that day. All right, so I'm going to take some questions. Anybody in the audience or watching at a distance, does anybody have any questions today about anything to do with resumes? Resumes. You sure did. That was a good question, though. We'll talk in just a minute. Any questions, guys? Did you have a question, sir? You good? All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming. For the folks in the room, your certificate that you were here is on the back of your sample resume. If your instructor gives extra credit, give that to them to prove you were here. For folks watching at a distance, please just email careerservices@gtcc.edu, and I will get you your certificate emailed to you so you get that extra credit. Don't forget, October 21st, interview prep. Trust me, it'll be much more lively. We'll have some really good examples to help you prepare. Have a great day. Thanks, guys.
When can we actually make an appointment to be a resume?
You just email me, buddy, and I'll get you on there. Yeah, email me today, and I'll get you on.